Hello, I'm the 10-minute English teacher. Let's get you exam ready. Today we're thinking about An Inspector Calls by JB Priestley, and I'm going to be providing you with a summary to Act 2. Before we move on, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are plenty of tutorials to help you revise and lots more to come. Okay, so let's turn you into an Act 2 expert. In front of you are a range of different images, and each one corresponds to a significant moment that takes place in Act 2. By the end of our time together, you should be able to recognise what each one of these images represents and be able to explain all of those significant moments that take place in Act 2. Okay, so we start with finding out about Gerald's involvement with the death of Eva Smith. So he reveals that he's met the girl at that point, calling herself Daisy Renton, in the Palace, a bar where prostitutes meet wealthy men. He seems to have rescued the girl, at this point Daisy Renton, from unwanted attention. Gerald explains how he let her live as his mistress and let her live secretly in a flat he owns in town. Whilst he has treated her with some decency, he has betrayed Sheila in doing so. Sheila then gives the ring back to Gerald. So Gerald tells the inspector that he'd like to go out and be alone, explaining he'll return, and that's when Sheila gives Gerald the engagement ring back, although she says that she does respect him more than she ever did before. It's at that point that the inspector wants to know where Eric is, and to confirm that he'd like to speak to everyone, he asks where Eric has gone. He will be in need of returning later, and his absence builds a bit of tension, especially when Mrs. BIRLING'S involvement is explored in further detail. We then find out about Mrs. BIRLING'S involvement. She's spoken to by the inspector. Mrs. BIRLING is the chair of a committee that gives money and support to young women in need. Mrs. BIRLING explains that the girl, who called herself Mrs. BIRLING, was refused money or assistance. She talks about girls of that class and explains rudeness, a motif in the play, and explains that the girl was refusing to take stolen money, which she refuses to believe. We then find out that the girl was pregnant when she died. The inspector speaks about the issue of the stolen money and then reveals that she was pregnant. Sheila's distressed. Mrs. BIRLING remains in denial of any responsibility for her demise. And it's at that point that we start to put the pieces together. Mrs. BIRLING argues that the father should be held accountable and made a public example of. The inspector echoes her words in mock agreement. Sheila is distressed and pleads with her mother to stop, and her mind's raced ahead, remembering that the inspector also wished to speak to her brother. And at the end of the Act 2, Eric returns. His mother is shocked in disbelief, having finally put the pieces together. So the act ends with the threat of public scandal, which would end the BIRLING's chance of having Mr. BIRLING knighted, looming, and that looms over the family as we head into Act 3. So there are those key images for Act 2. I suggest you pause the video here and see if you can explain exactly what takes place in each significant moment. And to take that even further, you can think about key quotations to learn and remember and recall for those significant moments that take place in Act 2. Okay, check out the other videos on my channel. I'll continue to add content. Feel free to ask something you'd like to see me cover in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share, and keep revising.